Okay, so good morning, and let us start with water, which is at the beginning with the water. My name is Stanisław Obirek, and I'm one of the victims of this conference because I could not say no to Susanna when she approached me. And I will not enter into reasons why she was so convincing to have me as a moderator. But one of the most important reason is this wonderful collection of speakers, which I am the first to be excited to hear. We will have small changes, namely Małgorzata Głowacka-Grajper decided as a host or co-host of the conference, being from Warsaw, she will be the last speaker, but it doesn't mean that she will be the least. So I'm, as I said, my own personal interest in post-secularism, secularism, religion is enough good reason to be happy to be here. And when I read short biographies of speakers, and I'm really happy to have a personal experience of hearing them. The structure of our panel will be very simple, but I hope that it will be also fruitful as the opening speakers wished us. And so we will have each of the participants of this panel will have something like 10 minutes presenting his or her view of the topic. And after we will have also a short reactions of each of the participants to what was said by others. And finally, the perhaps most exciting part, we will hear your comments, questions, and so on. So let us start. We have almost 2 hours, so it's a lot of time. We can start not being pressed by the short of time, which is the usual plug of each conference. So we will be free of it. So our first speaker is Barbora Spalová from Charles University, Prague. She is a social anthropologist. Her research interests are the anthropology of religion, memory studies, and studies of place and space. Her last book concerns relationships between churches and societies in Czechia and Slovakia. She's working on her book about old and new monasticism in the contemporary world. She is co-author of many books. Let me mention 2. Transmissions, Monasteries as Sites of Cultural Transfers, 2022. And if I read correctly, Laici a klerici w České katolické cerkwi na české ke spiritualité współpracy. I think it's not needed to be translated. So, Barbora, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I was, or if I understood it well, we've been asked to prepare a short presentations about some main contemporary changes in the nexus of society, religion, state in our countries. So, as everybody here knows, Czechia is a famously secular state. And it has deep reasons, not only the persecution of the religion during the communist times, even though it was one of the reasons. And I wanted to say or stress that this secularization did not stop in 1989. So we also had a really short time of religious revival after 1989, maybe a few months, then a few years. It was the effect of stocked people during the communist times who wanted to become priests or enter religious orders or be more like pronouncedly religious and who only could do it after 89. But then the revival was stopped mostly by the very conflictual and long-standing debate about the restitutions of the church properties, which it took time for 20 years to the Czech society to debate it, if the churches are moral enough or are such a big victims of the communist times that they are entitled to have these restitutions. And then finally it was passed by a very problematic political circumstances, but with the other argument, not about their moral status, but it was about separation of the church and state, which was seen by the majority of the society as something what we wish to have. And what lasted from this religious revival after 89? It was mostly the establishment of a very wide religious market. And as a Czech society has mostly no stereotypes or prejudices about religions and spirituality, so they are very open-minded to this market. So as I said in the beginning, the secularization didn't stop in 1889. Today, the young people are at least third generation, which really did not experience any religious education or upbringing. So the religious ignorance or analphabetism is really widespread. The numbers are very low. According to the methodology of the research, we can say that in 21 in the national census, maybe 13% of people, of the population, declared to be religious and to belong to some religious organization. 9 other percent declared to have a kind of faith, but not to belong. And so 80% of people are not in those two categories. So we can speak about what's going on in this 20% of the population. And it's interesting because it's connected to this process of the post-restitution finding of place of the churches in the society, which brings really interesting new dynamics to the religion society dynamic. Very briefly, we can say that there are two opposite dynamics. One is wishing to establish a kind of parallel society, which seems to be doable with the money from the restitution, and the other one which sees the position of the church more as a servant of the or part of the civil society and more in the servant position. But the most challenging question for the social scientists, at least in Czechia, is to say something valuable about this 80% of the population. And it's really not easy. So I will maybe finish my short presentation by a kind of joke, because I'm teaching anthropology of religion. And every year I'm asking the students at the beginning of the course, so what do you think, what is the reason for the societies to invest in a kind of form of a public religion? And mostly they answer in a Durkheimian sense, because they are students of social sciences. But every year we had about 10 years ago, we had about 20 to 25% of the students who were really pure Marxists. Like it's a religion, it's about manipulation and power. And now those people became so rare as the religious people. So, so the most widespread answer to this question is, you know, it can be fun. It's a kind of leisure religion. Maybe it can develop a kind of superpower, or maybe even a kind of self-fulfillment, something like this. So this is a very interesting dynamic, which we would like to investigate more. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbora. You just in 6 minutes said so many interesting and exciting things about Czechia. And I heard from Danuta Sosnowska that in secular Czechia, you have more writers writing about religion that we have in Poland, which is famous for being Catholic country. And the most famous Catholic theologian of Central Europe is from this secular country, namely Tomasz Halik, also popular in Poland. So I think we have some points to discuss in the second round. So we move now to Hungary,
okay,
with András Máté Toth, who is from University of Szeged. He's the director of Hungarian Academy of Science. He made his PhD at the University of Pécs, which is a city which I know from being a chaplain of students in 80 or 90, I think, and you host Teze community in Pécs. And I remember this is a wonderful experience in Hungary. Okay, so it's also PhD at the University of Vienna in Catholic theology, MA in Catholic theology at University of Vienna, diploma in religious education at the Theological College in Szeged, founder and professor at the first department. It's a long CV, very exciting, for the study of religions at Szeged University. Well, when you live enough, you have some to say. Yes. So you're a leader also of a Convince Religious Pluralism Research Group. Main research interest, the mutual interaction between social and religious turns in Central and Eastern Europe, the theoretical interpretation of contemporary religious processes, author of more than 250 scientific papers and 30 books in Hungarian, German, and English, pity not in Polish, a member of the editorial board, but it's still possible, yeah. It will be the good beginning, our conference, right? So you collaborate with many important journals. Okay, I think that we will hear from you interesting things on Hungary and perhaps also on Central Europe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this very, very long introduction, but everything is true. Sorry. I wrote my short presentation to be not too long. And to be frank, in the shadow of senility and Alzheimer, it's not an easy task to speak about memory. Yes, you know, but I do my best. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read that the death of Jesus, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, causing a seismic event that shocked the earth. The previously stable and solid state of affairs became unstable, a state of liminality. The tombs were opened, and the bodies of numerous saints who had previously died were resurrected. Subsequently, the deceased emerged from their tombs and proceeded to enter the holy city, where they were subsequently observed by a multitude of individuals. In the Central and Eastern European countries, the change of regime, 1990 around, may be perceived as a pivotal turning point. After a period of liminality, new configurations of politics, memory, culture, and value preferences have emerged. While the distinction between the dissolution of communism and the proliferation of democracy is somewhat nebulous, in existing democracies, the socially transformative elements of the past are once again manifest. It is not only the communist past that provides the fundamental building blocks from which present societies are constructed. Rather, It is the memory of the interwar or even earlier periods, including the medieval era. There are huge statues in the Budapest Memory Park, the robust figures of communism, Lenin, Stalin in several editions, the glorious Red Soldiers stand there in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, in the intimate community of each other. Huge sculptures in Lithuania, in Grutas Park, the Soviet sculpture park, and in many other countries of our region. But at all one, as if on a sacred signal, they are move out of the closed world of the sculpture park into the city to back control. They enter the schools and take the headmaster's seats. They enter the theaters and become the main directors again. They sit on the benches of parliament and decide the political debates and decisions and the agenda. So something seems to be repeated from the time of Jesus died today in our societies. The past is present, the past is decisive. As this introduction is being written, the region's newspapers are full of commemorations and assessment of the 20th anniversary of EU accession. The political pronouncements recall the naivety of the past, the achievements of the 2 decades that have passed. They affirm the European identity of their country, all minister presidents of us, and not less, strongly emphasize their own national autonomy. This emphasis on national autonomy and sovereignty is a common phenomenon in the region, whether we consider the countries of Central Europe or equally the Baltic and the Balkans, where it is perhaps most pronounced. International literature speaks of a resurgence of nationalism, analyzing and commenting on this process with a bittersweet taste in the mouth. However, if we examine the longer history of the countries of the region, we should not be surprised. This history has been marked by a contrast and insatiable desire for national autonomy. For all the countries and peoples of the region, there has been a persistent effort to achieve autonomy in the context of hegemonic powers, and these efforts have been successful, at least in the short term, for any country. After the change of regime, when these countries were freed from the Soviet Union and given a chance for national and state sovereignty, they saw their 100 to 400-year-old dreams come true. The memory of oppression became the dominant narrative, not only in the Balkans, but as well in Visegrad countries. While the societies of the region are clearly in favor of EU membership or see EU accession as the key to prosperity, they also engage in cultural and political discourse that is informed by nationalism. So to come very clear and very close to the question of religion and memory, memory works, memory wars, religion and memory are inextricably linked. Religion is, in a sense, a form of memory. In Judaism and Christianity, of course, memory and remembrance are particularly central to religious practice. Remembrance is a central tenet of religious beliefs, yet also that remembrance is primarily about the godness and merciful acts of a God who saves. The center of religious remembrance is not man, not society, but God. According to the Bible, the traumas suffered by humanity are explained by the fact that man, the people, turned away from God. The God-centered remembrance and recollection is also man's repentance. God-centered and self-critical remembrance can be considered a form of religious remembrance. And it is very important to clarify that, I think. Religion is a pervasive aspect of society, manifesting in various forms, including cults, rituals, and religious institutions. The genuinely religious character of memory is validated when cults, rituals, and institutions are simultaneously God-centered and self-critical. The incorporation of a God-centered perspective enables the memory of traumatic experiences to be contextualized within a broader framework. This process enables critical and reflective remembering of trauma. This process liberates the individual and the wider community from the captivity of trauma, while allowing them the freedom of confront their experiences without either denying the trauma or seeking revenge for it. In Western Europe, during the 60s and 70s, a bourgeois form of Christianity emerged in the realm of the processes of modernity and prosperity. The condition of this synchronicity was amnesia, so the lack of memory, amnesia, the forgetting of the victims of the Holocaust, first of all, in Western Europe, including those who perished in the Auschwitz concentration camp. In contrast, the Catholic theologian Johann Baptist Metz and the Reformed one, Jürgen Moltmann, both Germans, so established an anamnetic culture and Christianity, anamnetic. In contrast to assimilated bourgeois Christianity, they advocated for a culture of memory that upheld the dignity of the victims and was critical of society and religion of the amnesia. In the aftermath of the Central and Eastern European regime change, there appears to be a surfeit of memories. There is a kind of idealistic memory of the pre-communist era and a one-sided collective memory of the communist era. This is an understandable process given that communism banned the memory in the previous era and that memories return after the fall of communism. Concurrently, this process is also potentially dangerous, as the collective memory of victimhood has been released from the necessity of self-criticism regarding its own responsibility. Although the relationship between memory, remembrance, and religion remains strong, the process of memory work, and religion, as well as the process of religion and churches, differ significantly across countries and generations. There are numerous local priests and church communities, religious newspapers, and orders, religious orders, where the healing capacity of religion is taken more seriously, sometimes to the point of radicalism. This has led to a more nuanced view of society's past and present. This facilitates forgiveness and reconciliation, as well as the provision of secure environments for individuals seeking spiritual guidance, which can contribute to a more meaningful life.
Thank you, András, for your more phenomenological approach, which is also very important, I think, for our reflection. Joanna Wawrzyniak mentioned that we lost Jan Assmann, and we lost also Jürgen Moltmann a few days ago. So we have to work quickly because the good people are passing away. Okay, with Liliya Berezhnaya, we are moving to Wien and even to Moscow. So Liliya studied history at the Lomonosov Moscow State University and at the Central European University History Department in Budapest. Then she made her PhD in history at the Central European University, again in Budapest. Then she was research assistant and program coordinator, Center for Historical Studies, Central European University, again Budapest, with the research project Empires Unlimited. Program coordinator and website editor, Open Society Institute, Soros Foundation, Russia. Multiply research stays in Great Britain, Poland, US, and Canada. Many years of work as the lecturer at the universities in Passau, Münster, and Vechta. 2009-2020, she was head of the project, the Ukrainian Bastion, Europeans, Front Wall, and Antemurale Christianitatis, nationalization of the myth, habilitation project, and the Cluster of Excellence, Religion and Politics at the University of Münster. Visiting professor at Leuven, Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies, and Vienna. Associate researcher at the Institute of Eastern Christian Studies, Radboud University, Nijmegen. Co-editor of the book series, Crisis, Conflict, and Security in Central and Eastern Europe. Liliya, the floor is yours.
First, I would like to thank Susanna mostly, and we just decided today that last time we met, it was before the crisis, all crises that we tackled, all of us recently. So it's time to reconsider what this crisis meant. And I was invited here, as far as I got, to cover the one of the most probably, at least for many of us, for me particularly, the topic of the war in Ukraine and its situation in Ukraine, considering remembrance, religion, and post-secularism, which is not only challenging, but also painful, for me as a Ukrainian. Therefore, just in this 10 minutes? Input, I would like to suggest you some theoretical stances which might be also useful for other studies with a focus on Ukraine, and suggest two peculiar features which are important for understanding the situation in Ukraine before and particularly after the full-scale war in 22. So my theoretical suggestions are threefold. I completely agree that religion has entered the public space, particularly in Eastern European countries, that Susanna told, and we had it today in the presentation, the first panel, introductory panel. And we probably would agree with both Peter Berger and Serhii Plokhy that both history and religion are resurgent and back, but I would also argue that they were ever absent and remained latent and then activated in service of political projects for the national and imperial belonging. This also has to do with history, but it's much to do, as I said, has to do with crisis. And therefore, I think that in context of post-secular development in Eastern Europe in general, and in Ukraine in particular, following concepts of crucial importance. And the first one, I would argue, is secularization of history. This is the title of the volume, which I promised to bring it to life for several years, and contributors are here in this room right now. Therefore, I just want to have a very brief outline of the major idea there. As we can see, during crisis and societal conflict, history comes back to the surface it gains importance as a religious inflection. Maria Melchor uses the term mnemonic insecurity. Looking at the role of crisis and the feeling of danger in constructing national narratives. Although we can no longer speak of the overall monopolization, as she says, more or less in relation to Western Europe, of historical narratives, a securitization of historical memory associated with the spread of sacral symbols has been present in East European societies since the age of nationalism, and nowadays there is this kind of resurgence and coming back. Ukraine is, of course, no exception in this sense. Post-secularism, our key term here, usually this term is applied in relation to the main narratives of the mnemonic actors acting on behalf of various religious institutions and movements in modern Eastern Europe. While the post-secular term is applicable to East European late modern realities, is of growing interest, of course, as you all see here, and doing research on that, for sociologists of religion, historians, political scientists. Recent studies also pose the question of post-secular conflicts, meaning confrontations over values of modern pluralistic societies. Parts of these post-secular constructions, just one point, are cults of secular martyrs, a modern phenomenon that demonstrates the entanglement of the secular, religious, and heroic. Since the seminal studies of Reinhard Koselleck and George Moss on the role of the cult of fallen soldiers in shaping modern European society, the cults of the secular saints have been given attention in historical studies. Ukraine is no exception in this sense. Where the sacralized suffering is indeed a characteristic feature of the post-secular cults in the religion is not straightforward. I assume, however, that the construction of modern secular martyrs cults from a secular functional perspective can serve an example of the sacralization and of heroization of the secular. For Ukraine, most prominently is the cult of Heavenly Hundred, and of course, nowadays, the cults of recent fallen soldiers, which you can observe everywhere. The third term, which I would like to throw into this audience, is the term of security. This concept has been a key part of societal value system in modernity, becoming a primary aim of politics, and at the same time, an important constituent ground for modern societies. The related process of securitization describes the perception and interpretation of a threat via a dramatization of the current situation and the measures taken by political actors, particularly during internal crisis, upheavals, turning points, and even in international relations. Security serves as a tool for the legitimization of power relations, of identity, and social coherence. Ukraine is no exception in this sense, particularly considering the current war. To these general observations is, of course, I would like to put two more points which describe the peculiarities of Ukrainian religious and mnemonic landscape as such. Firstly, Ukraine presents a prime example of a divided memory cultures, especially regarding the history of two world wars, interwar period, and the Soviet post. Also medieval period as well, the Kiev and Rus period. The sacralization of memory about the relatively recent totalitarian history in the Ukrainian case holds particular significance and is further processed in the form of communicative memory. Secondly, Ukraine is a prime example of religious pluralism in Eastern Europe. Regarding Christian denominations, the key players include Orthodox of two denominations right now, Greek Catholics, Roman Catholics, various Protestant communities. The general trend of desecularization observed in various European countries is also evident in Ukraine, along with its own unique historical characteristics. Even before 1991, the situation in Ukraine was different from that in most other regions of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was already considered the Bible Belt of the Soviet Union, just to quote Catherine Warner here, where religiosity, including among Protestant communities, had persisted much longer and more resiliently. In this context of this religious plurality, historical narratives, rather than theological differences, play a key role as distinguishing denominational characteristic among the Christian churches, particularly Orthodox churches. So we have, in fact, various religious memory cultures. They conflict with each other. They interact with each other. They also demonstrate various mnemonic initiatives from below. For instance, just one of my best examples, church initiatives have led to the creation of museums like the Roman Catholic Museum of Tveriev, Martyrs of Faith of the 20th Century Memorial. Of course, one of the key examples is the Holodomor monuments and chapels in honor of the martyrs of faith, such in Babin Yar in Kyiv. I don't see Andrei Fer here right now. He has been dealing, including together with Yulia Yovchuk, of course, and so on, others, intensively into this issue. He will going to present, I don't know, Susanna, today, so you might pose him questions on this source-based study. But he can provide, not only myself, but there are different studies in this issue intensively done in Ukraine and abroad. Now, my final point, the full-scale war 22 mixed all the cards, mixed all initiatives and ambiguities. Cooperations and competitions are brought into new challenges. Religious pluralism and religions are challenged, as to quote President Zelensky, as a matter of national security. For us as scientists, I think it's worth, despite the atrocities of wars, the painful subject to study, still to follow these changes along these three lines: sacralization of history, post-secularism, and security. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liliana. And I think that sacralization of history is our Central East European phenomenon. We in Poland can say a long story about this. Now we move south with Juraj Majo. We move to Slovakia. He represents the Institute of Ethnology and Social Anthropology. He's a researcher at the Institute of Ethnology and Social Anthropology of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, and an assistant professor of Comenius University, Department of Human Geography, Demography, and Territorial Development. Majo's teaching and research activities include the history of the population of Slovakia, current demographic development, aging of the population, and the study of ethnicity, religiosity, and non-religion in broader interdisciplinary approaches. Currently, he's participated in several projects aimed at research of non-religiosity, Roma religiosity, or demographic analysis of the current religious landscape in Slovakia. Juraj, floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here. And thank you for organizers for having opportunity to visit and participate in such a very interesting and hopefully fruitful conference. It's obvious I represent the smallest country from all of the countries that are here. Smallest, but very strange in current development. I don't just mean politically, but it's been just aftermaths of developments in society as such. Let's say we are the country with a very specific self-esteem that is still about to emerge, to develop some scientists would say that we have a syndrome of a young brother, especially in comparison with Czechia, as a long-term interconnected histories in 20th century, and let's say peaceful and fruitful separation in 1993. Many societal surveys show that Slovakian society, but it's not just Slovakian, but it's divided in many crucial crucial topics of society. Half of society believe that salvation comes from Moscow. Half society believe that we should belong more to the Western societies. Many Catholics feel that they are good Catholics, and they feel also that the major source of evil is an financialist from the US who has an Hungarian origin, which is common for not just for Slovakian society. And they feel this is the good sign of, and this is the way how they should represent and present the world they see. So for this concept, or for these ideas and the mixture of societal development, I like the idea that's been used very much by András Toth, the wounded identity, wounded society. If you have wounds on your skin, the skin is divided into two parts. There is a chasm between the two parts, and the major goal of healing is to join and to overcome this chasm. So the skin is as a one surface, and it's connected and works and operates as it should. This is the main concept I like, that the wounds in society are not just healed, but they are created over the time. And they are not just based on a current political situation. They are always interconnected with the memory, with the amnesia, with the selective concept or selective approach to memories, and how it is interpreted, and how this interpretation is, for example, sustained and supported by alternative reality, by alternative facts and alternative ways of seeing the world, which is very common for our societies. So these wounds are created. People sometimes have tendencies to heal them. Some people like to create new wounds in societies, and some people just feel that there is no way how to heal this situation. And the question that comes out, especially in secular societies, more secularized societies, post-secular societies, and it's also a question for Slovakia: what is the role of religion in such society in healing these wounds? Is still a space for churches, for church leaders, for the words of appeasement, for the words for reconciliation that are pronounced from religious leaders? They can be the healing agent in our societies, or what is it? How we can replace this agent? As we all see that in history, the religion, religious faith, religious communities, religious practicing were very uniting, one of the most uniting elements in everyday life of a people. But what is it now? Is it believe in alternative reality that's uniting people? It's what they see in the Facebook profiles, in Telegram profiles of their famous or their favorite political leaders. Is this something that should be uniting and building the bridges? So this is the question for our society, especially the wounded society, as Slovakia is a good example of. The other aspect that can be interesting, it's from the perspective of my scientific background, and it's a demography. How this changes in secularization, in onset of secularization, and the growing diversity of society in terms of religious affiliation and religious expression and the spiritual views, how this can be reflected in essential demographic data or essential demographic figures that we can read and interpret. We see we see growth of changes. And Slovakia is one of the luckiest countries that still have data from census. And the question on religious identity, it's compulsory. So people usually tend to answer, and at least answer to this question, which is different from Czechia and then Hungary, where they just omit this question. But on one side, it creates the feeling that the society is still in some ways religious, but from inside, from the immersion into data from another sources, we see that it's changing. We see that the internal aspect or internal aspects of faith and practicing, especially of a Roman Catholic Church as being the largest the denominational body in Slovakia, is changing, and we will see, and we still don't know what will be the aftermaths of this change. I see big similarities, or I see notable similarities with Poland, where also the position of the Roman Catholic Church in society is changing, especially in intergenerational perspective. But what we see, and it's very interesting, it's a growth number of nuns, and the very interesting source of this non-religiosity. The ISSP survey has revealed that for the first time, slight majority of those who declared as nuns are not those nuns who were raised as nuns, so they were raised as nuns on purpose, but slight majority of them were those who were raised in some religious body. So it means they are the non-verts. So they, during their lifetime, during the life period of their life, they decided they want to have nothing to do with church anymore. And there might be dozens of reasons why people tend to leave the church or leave the community they've been raised. So this is very interesting point, that on one side we see that there is necessary an important call for finding some common platform. We need to find who this agent in this common platform should have the most important voice. Is it religion? Is it something that should be connecting on a spiritual basis? But on the other hand, we also see that behind the figures of religiosity and denominational affiliations, we see that internal structure is changing significantly, and especially in intergenerational perspective, it will shift society towards new perspective and new position. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Milo. Just 7 minutes. It was the very concise intervention, and I think you gave us a lot to think about. If really religion is helpful in healing wounds, what about religion when it causes wounds? Perhaps it will be also a good question. So we return to our planned first speaker, Małgorzata Głowacka-Grajper, from here, Faculty of Sociology, Warsaw University. A PhD is in is a sociologist and social anthropologist, and works at the Faculty of Sociology at our university. Her main research interests include the issues of contemporary national and ethnic identity, the relationship between the local and national dimensions of memory, memory activism, and the relationship between social memory and religion. Currently, she is working on a project on the post-colonial perspective on imperial Russian heritage in Poland. She edited in 2020 The Burden of the Past, History, Memory, and Identity in Contemporary Ukraine with Anna Wylegała, and a year earlier, Milieu de Mémoire in Late Modernity, Local Communities, Religion and Historical Politics with Zuzanna Bogumił. Małgorzata, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me for this panel. I was asked to say something about Polish memory studies and the history of memory studies in connection with religious studies. And as Joanna mentioned, we have our Stefan Czarnowski, who at the beginning of the 20th century wrote about the cult of St. Patrick and as an Irish cultural hero. And he examined his place in the identity and cultural memory of Ireland. But in fact, we hadn't such researchers on Polish society and on Polish culture. There is only one book by Kazimierz Dobrowolski, who engaged in examination of the cult of St. Florian in Poland, but in a medieval time. So it wasn't really a topic for Polish, may say, memory scholars or ethnographers or sociologists. One of the Polish anthropologists, Ludwik Stomma, when discussing in his book ethnographic researches on Polish villages in 19th century, noted that ethnographers did not deal with the issue of a Christian religion at all. And when you read these works, you may see that, well, get impression that Polish villages are not Christian at all. But why? Because religion was so embedded in everyday life and so obvious that, according to him, ethnographers did not consider it as an interesting topic. So we really have a special situation in Poland. We always discuss it with Zuzanna if we really deal with a post-secular era in Poland, on epoch, or rather our society is a society who becoming secularized now. So we are dealing with the processes of secularization in post-secular environment in Europe and beyond. So it is, I think, very, very special point. And of course, many works were written on the Roman Catholic denomination, which was perceived during communist times as a religion and also institution of resistance. But after the fall of communism, this image evolved into seeing religion and Roman Catholic Church rather as a church organization striving to dominate in many fields, political, cultural, economic, and also memory field in Poland. But I think that Roman Catholic religion still plays an identity role. Less and less often, but it is still important because it is the only accepted source of universally recognizable symbols of ceremonies in Poland, especially those accompanying rite of passage, birth, death, but also national remembrance celebrations. And now in Poland, in the context of research on this relationship between collective memory and religion, most often the Roman Catholic denomination is examined because Roman Catholics form the majority of the Polish society. However, this relationship is also very important for followers of other religions living in Poland. And in fact, as I think nowadays, religion has an identity significance more in minority groups in Poland than in the majority of Polish society. I would like to pay your attention only to two examples. For example, one is the Orthodox community in Poland, for which it is very important now to commemorate the action of demolitions of Orthodox churches by Polish authorities during interwar period, and which really cares and pays attention to commemorating and preserving the memory of these events. Another maybe obvious example is also Jewish memory. Memory of both Jewish life before the war and the Holocaust, and the faith of Jewish communities after the war. which is still very important, as Susanna said in the introduction, it is still mobilized memory. And religious symbols and references always appear in these commemorations of Jewish history, because they are very important aspects of Jewish identities. And we may say that this presence of religious language in public commemorations, in collective memory rituals, can be seen as, first, national tradition and national identity, and of course, religious feelings and a sacred war and sacred life. Also, of course, this may be also true for other religion, and we have this dual nature of religious rituals and symbols now. So, source of national identity and a source of spiritual sacred experiences and feelings. And it is really our job now, I think, to make in-depth research on the relations with these two aspects in Poland. And interesting example is research on the pilgrimage movement in Poland, the Polish most prominent pilgrimage centers. And researchers point out that the Roman Catholic Church in Poland, in these places, create various types of places of collective memory, but refers rather not to memory or even religion, but to the notion of heritage. It is not national or church religious memory, but rather heritage, because it is still perceived as a safe category. So heritage is something that you not discuss because you inherited it from the past, from your ancestors. So you got something from the past, and now you can show it without discussing. And it is, I think, very important turn in seeing this problem and subject for future research. I think also that we in Poland really need studies on the networks, relations, entanglements between different religions, because now we study them, in fact, separate. Different religions in Poland, and not in the relation with each other, that were, of course, for ages, for centuries, a really important part of Polish social life. And when Joanna said about Jan Assmann and death of Jan Assmann, he was a historian who paid attention to ancient religion and showed that the way of thinking about the past and religion that he encountered in ancient civilization can be also used, can be traced in our times, in the contemporary world. And I thought about the book of Pierre Crepon on religions and the war. It is a work about how different religions see the war and how they perceive it. And it was written in 1991 because Pierre Crepon was shocked by the war in Iraq. And he is a historian of religion, and he said that it was shocking for him that after thousands of years, still the religion thinking can be a mobilized force for war. And after this 30 years, I think we have really the same situation. But again, we are surprised sometimes, but by this force of religious symbols and thinking in mobilizing in conflicts in international relations between states. And it is also the case that I think should be studied more in depth. Thank you.
Thank you, Małgorzata. In 10 minutes, you make a structural analysis of very complex situation in Poland. And now we have 20, almost 50 minutes for debate. Perhaps we will start with us. I will not be now a policeman giving you minutes and place when and order when and how long you can talk. Simply, I would invite you to react to what struck you, perhaps, or what you would like to add to your respective country or your respective field of analysis, simply as a follow-up of what we hear. Just to remember that the topic of our panel is memory, religion, and post-secularism in Central and Eastern Europe. And perhaps I will start asking Juraj, because you mentioned nuns in Slovakian context, and I am fascinated by this new category also in Poland. And I remember in one of my classes, courses on post-secularism, I included a unit on nuns, and all of my Polish students declared that they are nuns, which was a pleasant surprise for me, honestly. So perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on it, but this is the only one question which I would like to, out of curiosity, to hear, and the rest I will leave the floor to free debate between us.
I think it's a very interesting category that in some cases it's an emerging category, especially Poland, Slovakia, but for Czechia it's not that unusual. The key question is that we need to change in society. We need to change attitude toward this category. There are still some prejudices we still have that has some religious background, as nuns being somebody who has no values, who believe in nothing, who are not connected in any kind of community. So they are uprooted. They're disconnected from society. They are the ones who are destroying the connectivity of society. So these are the stereotypes and prejudices we have to go through in society. But still, many people see it as those nuns as the godless part of society. So it doesn't have to mean that they are strong atheists, but what is the task for us is to find out and to have more research on internal diversity of this portion. So it's diverse, it's emerging. It's not just the aspect of a heritage of a former atheistic regime that was here until 1990s, but it's also a matter of a cultural turn in a way. So both people who decide that they don't want to have anything with official religion, they want to be free in their thoughts, not restricted into dogmas and teachings. And it's also interesting how it goes through the generations and through the approach to the different views. But I think it's getting very common for societies in Central and Eastern Europe.
Do you have a special Slovak term for nuns? Because in Polish, because I agree with you that we have problem with this. In Polish, the good friend of mine who is a philosopher of religion, Professor Brąk from Catholic University of Lublin, he has equivalent as a nijacy.
Yes,
is a very derogative. My own impression is that we have a very good concept in Polish, bezwyznaniowy, which is neutral,
not affiliated.
Not affiliated.
We use the category that's used in census.
Yeah,
but many people from Catholics or the church representatives would see them as atheists. They would see it's a synonym, which is of course not true. Apostate, or godless people.
Yeah. Okay.
In Czechia, we have more positive term, which is niecisti, nic, but nieco, which means that they believe in something. So they have a kind of, they don't want to define it, or it can be a blend of different ontological ideas and practices. It can be something what is only temporarily. It can change a lot. It is very individualized, but it's nieco. So it's like something.
Yeah. Free.
Just as Professor Obirek told, I've been working for several years in the Cluster of Excellence in Religion and Politics at the University of Münster, which is interdisciplinary institution, also in teaching. And depending basically on the focus of the head of this institution, and the last years as I was there, it was a religious sociologist, there was a focus upon the issues of secularization or on history or on theology and so on and so forth. So last year's it was religious sociologist, means the topic of nuns was quite on the top on this. And one of the questions was how to define them. And me as a historian, I learned a lot, and there were different schools competing with each other in this issue. One saying it's a subject of secularization. So it's inevitable form of modernity, which is developing, so it's a variant thesis and so on and so forth. And so it's inevitable. And earlier or later, we have it in Great Britain, we have it here and there, and we have it in Eastern Europe, despite the religious revival, which is noticed by everyone. And there is another school telling us that, it's not quite godless. And modernity doesn't necessarily mean godless. And if you ask these guys, your students, our students, my students, and telling you what do they mean, they will probably do something, either agnostic or something, or I'm not sure, or I'm looking for. So someone who is seeking for something, but keeping distance to religious institutions mostly. And in this case, I'll bring Ukraine once again to the ground and quote Catherine Warner, who is talking much in this context about within the context of Ukraine as a religious country, at the same time, country of religious pluralism, and talking about institutional disaffection. This is her term. Institutional disaffection, so meaning people remain, they are not nuns, but they remain religious people, so believers. They designate themselves, according to all surveys, as believers, but they are, let's say, disappointed by the situation, religious situation, competition, confrontation, adds and odds of this religious pluralism, with all blackmailing, with affiliation to, different oligarchs, political parties, governments, whatsoever. So they profess their religiosity regardless institutions, regardless churches, different churches. They go to miraculous objects for pilgrimages, regardless of that, because it's namol in the mist. They did it for centuries, and they do it right now, despite Soviet period and so on and so forth. They combine it a lot with esoteric. They combine it a lot with paganism, let's say, in our definition. They don't regard it as such. And at the same time, they don't say they're agnostic or they're nuns or they're whoever. They say we are Christians. No, we are believers, let's say. So I would like to put this point, a differentiation to the nuns, that we have also such a phenomenon in a religious country.
I want just to mention that about this question, nuns, there is a new book published in the beginning of this year, Faith and Beliefs of Non-Believers. It is a result of a project led by Tomáš Halík, and a lot of people from Visegrad countries published smaller or longer pieces in this edited book So I will write, Susanna, the exact bibliographical data about, okay, and then you can share it. But if I
Yes.
already have, yeah.
You have a number of microphones.
Yeah. I am a little bit unsure or unsure or nervous, perhaps, if I hear post-secular. Post-secular, sorry. Where is post-secular? Because if should I think post-secular means that religion come back? But what type of religion come back? It is religion, it came back which we observed before secularization, but when started secularization in the 60s, perhaps, at least in Western Europe, perhaps in our countries earlier, because of the forced communist and atheistic and anti-religious ideology. So it is the first question, post-secular, what type of religion come back? On the other time, is secularization, so the disappear of religion from the public spheres, is really a fact, or it happened in our countries really during the last 15 or 100 years or 60 years? I am not really sure. It is not clear. And why is it so important for me? Because always if we say post-modern, post-secular, post-Christian, the message for me of these categories is always that we are not sure what we mean regarding secular, regarding Christian, regarding religious, and so on. Therefore, it is a very good play to play with non-disciplinary categories. So categories not from cultural anthropology, not from history, not from sociology, not from sociology of religion. So to use categories from belletristics, literature, or from natural sciences, for example, resilience, or what I try to do with wounds, because they are not too concrete. They can be defined through international and interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary discussions. And then we have a tool. Then we have a category tool to interpret more precise what happens in our societies. And the nonce is one of them, of course. Nobody knows what means nonce, of course, but many people are willing to deal with this category, and it seems to be very useful. Or for 5 years, it was very modern to speak about seekers and dwellers, because Charles Taylor and Jose Casanova and so on, they wrote a book about. And then Tomáš Halík with his friends, according to myself, we made a big project asking where is in Central and Eastern Europe seeker? And we don't know, but it was a very fruitful discussions about the question, what means seeker, not to speak about dwellers, it is a bigger problem. Okay, thank you. I am long as always.
Thank you. In social censuses in Poland, we can see that this category of non-believer atheist is very low, very small. But this year, in fact, I had a very interesting discussions with my students, and they said that it is very difficult to be atheist in Poland. Not because of discrimination or something like that, but people think that it is impossible to be atheists. So when you say that you are atheist, they say, okay, you don't believe in God, but you believe in something supernatural. No, I thought, okay, but you believe in something somewhere. No, come on, it's impossible. And that's the main problem. And this religious thinking is so deeply embedded in our society that even people in their 20s can't believe that it is really, really possible. And we have also these notions in Polish language. We always say, oh, Jesus, Maria, and so on. And we have also this expression, signed true, święta racja. And it means, of course, it's obvious. And my friend who is atheist, tried to use secular true, świecka racja, all the time. But he gave up because it was too difficult for him, because it is so deeply embedded even in language. But he gave up it. He's saying true now. And I think when I was listening to you, that it is really a special feature of our situation. But when you said about this religion, about style of life, of everyday life, I think we more and more say have something like this in the younger generations. I have a lot of contacts with teenagers because of my children. And for example, it is now popular between them to say that they believe in God, but why they should limit it only to one religion? Come on, we have so many to choose, so why not? And it is also something like everyday life, something like hobby, maybe. I think in some decades we will have atheists who are believed that they are atheists. And this notion also of religion as a style of life.
I would like, if it's possible, just to turn attention to something other. I was very much intrigued by Liliya's speech about secularization and sacralization of the history of these both projects, which are somehow complementary. I think it's easy to see it in regard to national histories or national memory projects. But my question is about Central European historical memory, and mainly about the memory of the totalitarianism as a project which I see as so on one hand, there is a stock in this memory of martyrs, so in the religious memory, which is translated into the secular language and brought to the larger audience as the memory of the victimhood, the memory of the totalitarian regimes. And when it becomes the memory of the totalitarianism, it can be completely global. It's no more connected to post-Soviet countries, but it can be connected to all kinds of totalitarianism. But I see the memory actors from our region, like taking the active part in this politicization of the memory and bringing it at least to the European level. So there is a project of the Pan-European Memorial of the Totalitarianism, which is brought by the Platform of Memory and European Memory of Conscience, which was created in Prague, and now the president is in Poland. So do you see, or do you have some historian, some critical view of this movement? Thank you.
Thank you so much, because this is actually one of the key questions which are addressed also in the book, which I mentioned, which I promised to bring to life, but also generally the debates on memory studies in our region, I guess. So first, on the one hand, we have this proliferation of also language connected with, as you mentioned, connected with totalitarian past, with sacral symbols. So we are talking about, or we hear about repentance, we hear about victims, we hear about martyrs, as I said, also secular martyrs, and so on and so forth, In Ukraine, it's Holodomor is one paradigmatic example of that. And we have symbols of that. We have crosses, whatsoever. So on the other hand, so with the attempt to provide kind of pan-European global, as you said, so transnational memory landscape of that would tackle, from my understanding, on first divided memory cultures in different countries. And second, this, well, let's say parallel to Holocaust wouldn't work. Because on the one hand, we have forgetting the perpetrators in this model. And secondly, we have different stages of development of memory cultures generally. So including the level of secularization and so on and so forth. So yes, we have these models, but I don't think it will work on a pan-European level as it did generally since 1970s with Holocaust.
Very short, just mention a publication. Perhaps all people here know the name, but I wanted to mention it openly. Jelena Subotic, because her approach is to understand why in Central and Eastern Europe the memory work concerning Gulag, why is it as an affront from the Western European expectation coming memory on Auschwitz? So there is a counterbalancing memory focus, and in her book Red Star, Yellow Star, she elaborated it, I think, wonderful. And the other aspect could be we are speaking about memory, and it is correct. But I think in our societies, because they are so wounded, memory is never neutral. Memory is, I think, an inherent part of a so-called collective mourning process. And because of that, the question is not what happened as a fact, like Timothy Snyder in his wonderful books wrote. It is important, but for our society, for the general or the public discussions about the re-establishing of an autonomous identity, collective identity, the question is not what happened, but the question is, how can I build up a society today with the elements of a constructed past? And it is exactly the public process of mourning or coming true. And therefore, it is perhaps not bad to combine the approach, the memory approach, with the mourning approach.
Perhaps I will react to what András said about post-secularism, because I think in our session, memory and religion have are good guys, and post-secularism became a bad guy. And I am one of the enthusiasts of post-secularism. So I will use my place as a moderator to give more credit to post-secularism as a concept. And I think it has, for the first time, I heard this already 20 years ago, when in Munich, Josef Ratzinger discussed with Jürgen Habermas, and actually Habermas used it. Someone else, Elber, if I remember correctly, from Berlin, used it for the first time, and Habermas used it as a very useful concept to reconcile secularism with religion. And what astonished me, that Ratzinger, who in the time was not a very dialogical type, buy it. And instead, I agree with Mr. Habermas, because we religious people, we need a correction of secularism. And exactly this mutual, I would say, mutual enrichment is the essence of post-secularism. That you are in the moment when we decide that post-secularism is something which can unite us and not divide us. I think this is the moment when post-secularism became, for me, and in fact, I wrote a book about this, which will be published soon, because I think is something which are giving us a key to overcome tensions or hatred, wounds in the society, because usually the religious people are tempted to blame the atheists for all fatal consequences of human doings, and vice versa. So I think post-secularism is an interesting attempt. I'm not saying that this is panacea for everything, but in any way, and we have already amount of publications. And the last, what I want to say, perhaps provocatively, that the newest project is to combine post-secularity with decoloniality, which means that we have and we need a new approach to old concepts like colonialism, imperialism, etc., etc. So this new, fresh, I would say, creative approach to our traditional concept is what I connect with post-secularism as something positive. I don't know if I reconcile you with this horrific concept or...
The book first, and then...
Okay, unfortunately, it will be in Polish. I can send you... For now, I can send you just an article, The Challenge of Post-Secularism. And one of the most prolific author in Polish historiography on religion, Janusz Tasbir, used to say that academic conferences are not the peace conferences, so the final agreement is not necessary. So it's good that we have different opinions, and it's good so. Thank you very much, and I give a microphone to Zuzanna.
Thank you all for this great discussion, and to Stanisław Obirek for moderating this great discussion.